The metal snapped. My fence shuddered under the force of bolt cutters, and before I could move, a sledgehammer slammed into the wooden sign marking my property. I froze. Sheila Vance, the HOA president, was standing in my yard dressed like a burglar, filming herself as if this were a reality show. Then her phone rang. I heard her frantic voice calling 911, claiming I was armed and dangerous. Sirens tore down the cul-de-sac. I sipped my coffee calm, watching her make the worst mistake of her life. She had no idea who she was messing with, and by the time she realized it, it might already be too late. Sheila Vance wasn't just your average HOA Karen. She was the self-appointed sheriff of Whispering Pines, a woman who treated rules like weapons and property lines like battlefields. The first time she truly made herself known, it wasn't with a note on my door or a passive-aggressive text. It was with a glare that could freeze the blood in your veins. She prowled the cul-de-sac in her pristine white SUV eyes, hidden behind oversized sunglasses, scanning yards like a hawk. Her power wasn't official, it was psychological. People did what she said not because of bylaws, but out of fear. And when she decided I was a problem, she escalated quickly. Fines, threats, surveillance. Nothing was too petty, nothing too extreme. I'd seen her cross lines before in whispers and rumors, but now she was getting bold. There was a manic gleam in her eyes when she plotted a tiny smile whenever she imagined making someone squirm. She wanted control, and I was the shiny, uncooperative target she couldn't just ignore. By the time she marched into my yard with bolt cutters and a sledgehammer, it was clear Sheila wasn't just enforcing HOA rules. She was waging war, and she thought she could win. Little did she know the battlefield wasn't hers to command. I moved to Whispering Pines for one reason: the back 5 acres of my property ran straight into the Blackwood National Forest. Quiet, secluded, a place where I could decompress after a week, tracking poachers, relocators, and wildlife disasters. I wasn't looking for neighbors' drama or HOA politics. I wanted peace. My days were simple. Early mornings in the woods, coffee in hand, checking cameras and trail sensors. Afternoons in the office, tracking permits, logging incidents, filing reports. I kept my yard tidy, waved at the mailman, and otherwise stayed out of everyone's way. It was a lifestyle built around calm, precision, and legality. The first crack in that calm came with Sheila. At first, it was small things, a prolonged glance as she drove past her SUV, creeping along the cul-de-sac like she was cataloging crimes that didn't exist. Then came the noise complaints, the safety violation emails, and the subtle threats hidden in HOA letters. She had a sixth sense for annoyance. If you irritated her in the slightest, she escalated. Bow season started, and I followed my usual routine: safe, legal, ethical. A 10-point buck had been moving between the federal land and my property for weeks. I had my safety berm in place, tags in order, and my compound bow at the ready. The woods were silent except for the rustling leaves. Then her voice shattered it all. Sheila Vance, red-faced, yelling from the edge of my property, threatening police action over a legal-controlled hunt. That day, I realized peace in Whispering Pines wasn't a guarantee, it was negotiable. And Sheila had decided I wasn't allowed to have it. By the time the thick official-looking envelope arrived from the HOA a week later, the threat was crystal clear. $5,000 fine. Alleged violations that didn't exist. Legalese designed to intimidate. And at that moment I understood this wasn't about hunting noise or even property lines. This was personal. Sheila had declared war, and she wasn't planning to stop at letters. Every quiet day, every simple routine would be her battlefield. And I would have to decide how to fight back before she made the next move. It began subtly, like a shadow slipping through the neighborhood. Sheila's SUV would crawl past my driveway in the early morning's engine, barely humming, phone held high filming, as if she were collecting evidence of a crime I hadn't committed. The first notes were almost laughable: a sticky note on my door warning about lawn height, an email expressing community concern over noise. I ignored them at first. My mind was still in the woods, tracking wildlife, checking cameras, filing permits. But a sense of being watched gnawed at me. Every time I stepped outside, I caught the glint of sunglasses scanning my yard. Every branch snapping or leaf crunching felt amplified, like a signal that I wasn't alone. Then came the footprints, muddy fresh, leading from the edge of her yard toward mine. I followed them, half expecting to find a neighbor's kid sneaking in. Nothing. Just silence, broken only by the whisper of wind through the trees. That's when it hit me this wasn't curiosity. It was methodical, deliberate, psychological warfare. Sheila was sending a clear message: she was watching, waiting, and planning. Every glance she gave my house, every drive past, was her calculating strategy. Next, the harassment became invasive. One morning, I discovered muddy boot prints by the shed window. Someone had tampered with the lock, testing it. Then scratches appeared on my back fence, small at first, almost subtle but intentional. I started finding photos slipped under my door, my yard, my driveway, angles only possible if someone had trespassed. Notes accompanied them, documented for HOA records. Consider yourself warned. It wasn't legal enforcement, it was intimidation. I realized she was hunting me, trying to find any pretext to escalate the $5,000 fine or to force me off my property. Nothing was safe. Laundry on the line, firewood stacked neatly, even the way I parked my truck, all potential violations in her mind. She misinterpreted everything, weaponizing my lawful actions. It wasn't just rules anymore. This was personal. Every morning I found her SUV idling at the end of my driveway. Every night I double-checked my security cameras, the locks, the perimeter. I knew I couldn't relax. Sheila had made her target clear me. Then the damage came. The fence, barbed wire, and posts I'd spent weeks working on were slashed and twisted. The mailbox lay in tatters, a small note taped to it. Consider this a public warning. My high-definition dash cam, the same type used in federal investigations, was ripped from its mount, mud smeared across the lens. The envelope from the HOA arrived a few days later, a $5,000 fine, citing unlawful, harmful activity, disturbing public peace, threatening public safety. At first I laughed the absurdity, overwhelming my frustration. Then I read the fine print. Legal action escalated. My property could be seized. My laughter died. It wasn't just financial, it was psychological. Every glance out the window, every creak in the driveway, reminded me she was out there. She had gone from annoyance to outright criminal intimidation, and she was good at it. The way she orchestrated the surveillance, the writing, the fines, it was petty, vengeful, and exhausting. She didn't just want me to pay. She wanted control, fear, and submission. Every step she took, every inch she invaded, pushed me closer to the edge of despair, and I knew it wouldn't stop until someone fought back. Her next move was audacious. Sheila dialed 911 breathless and frantic, claiming I was armed, dangerous, threatening her life. Within 30 minutes, sirens screamed down the cul-de-sac. Deputy Miller arrived first, followed by 2 state troopers. Lights spun engine noise, shaking the autumn chill. Sheila met them at the fence, waving her arms, shrieking about threats, weapons, and public danger. Her meticulous plan of intimidation had backfired. Now, law enforcement was here. I stepped onto my porch, hands empty, calm coffee still warm. I explained the facts: compound, bow safety, berm, proper, licenses, fully legal activity. Miller listened professional, trying to sort truth from spectacle. The troopers scanned my property, noting the clear setbacks, the undisturbed forest line, the carefully placed safety measures. But even with law enforcement present, the escalation had reached a dangerous point. Sheila had moved from harassment to obstruction, vandalism, and false reporting. Every step she took was a deliberate risk. Every accusation amplified the stakes. And all the while, her expression revealed her growing panic. At dawn, she came prepared. Head to toe black, a sledgehammer swinging from her hand, bolt cutters in the other. My fence, the one I built to protect my yard and my work, was her target. She cut, snapped, hammered, and planted a wooden HOA sign atop my safety berm. HOA property trespassing, seized for safety violations. Then the phone call. 911. A man with a gun. He's threatening me. I sat in my kitchen sipping coffee, watching the feed from my cameras. Every action, every step, every smash captured in 4K night vision uploaded to the cloud. Trespass, vandalism, false reporting, criminal acts she could no longer deny. The sirens grew louder, lights tore across my yard. Sheila's confidence crumbled as she realized she had gone too far. For the first time, she looked vulnerable, exposed. This was the final escalation. The line had been crossed. The trap was set, and she didn't know the battlefield she had entered, or that she was about to lose everything. The sirens tore through the foggy cul-de-sac, wailing over the crisp October morning. Red and blue lights bounced off the trees, spinning across the driveway, catching on the dewdrops that clung to my lawn. Deputy Miller's cruiser screeched to a stop first, followed closely by 2 state troopers, their boots crunching on the gravel. Sheila bolted from the backyard, like a live wire. Arms flailing, face bright red, hair sticking to her sweaty forehead. He's got a gun. He's dangerous. Call the police now. Every word was punctuated by frantic gestures pointing at my house, as if sheer volume could make her story true. I stepped onto the porch, hands visible, coffee cup in hand, calm. No weapon, no rage. Just me standing in plain flannel and jeans, a man with nothing to hide. Miller's gaze flicked between me and Sheila, squinting, trying to read the chaos in front of him. Sheila ignored him, completely shrieking about HOA jurisdiction property violations and her so-called rights. Her pristine white SUV loomed behind her like a silent witness. Neighbors peeked from windows, holding their breath, faces pale. I raised my voice, projecting steady. "Deputy Miller, before anyone does anything, there's something you need to see." The words cut through the chaos. Sheila's wild expression faltered for the first time, a hint of fear flickering behind her rage. I opened my wallet slowly. Not a license, not an ID. A gold U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service badge shimmered in the morning light. Miller's jaw tightened. Sheila froze mid-scream, eyes widening, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "I am Caleb Thorne," I said, voice calm, deliberate. "I am a sworn federal officer. My hunting and field surveys on this property are legal and part of a federal wildlife assessment. This woman has trespassed, destroyed private property, filed a false police report, and is obstructing a federal agent in the performance of his duties." Miller's posture shifted instantly. He scanned the yard, the smashed fence, the sledgehammer lying in the mud, the wooden HOA sign planted on my berm, and looked at Sheila. Her expression flickered between disbelief and panic. I pulled my laptop from the porch railing and activated the trail camera footage. There she was in head-to-toe black, cutting the fence, planting the sign, smashing posts, her movements deliberate. Audio from her 911 call played clearly, breathless, falsely claiming I was a threat. Neighbors leaned from windows, whispering, staring. Sheila's confidence evaporated. "That's fake. That's impossible. You can't prove," she sputtered, pointing at the footage as if it might magically disappear. Miller shook his head, voice firm. "Ma'am, you've committed felony vandalism, filing a false report, and trespassing. Step aside." The reality hit her like a brick wall. Every shred of authority she had wielded in Whispering Pines collapsed in a single moment. Sheila's defiance crumbled completely. Gone were the white SUV, the pristine vest, the designer boots. Only terror remained. She tried to argue, scream, bargain, threaten, name drop, but none of it mattered. The chaos she had created was now her undoing. Miller stepped forward, calm, deliberate. "Turn around, hands behind your back. You're under arrest." The sound of the handcuffs clicking was like music. Relief surged through me. The woman who had harassed, vandalized, and terrorized my life was finally contained. I handed Miller a flash drive containing the HOA financials. Years of embezzlement, tens of thousands funneled into Sheila's personal projects, now documented and undeniable. He glanced at the drive, then at Sheila, whose screams had turned into muffled sobs. Her voice cracked as she tried to justify, to claim innocence, to argue legal technicalities. But the neighborhood had witnessed it all: the vandalized fence, the planted sign, the falsified fines. Emails leaked to the HOA staff revealed her corruption. By the time they led her to the cruiser, defeated and humiliated, the tension in the cul-de-sac released. I leaned against my truck, coffee in hand, surveying the scene. The tyranny of Whispering Pines was over, not through negotiation, not through compromise, but through proof, patience, and precision. Every twisted post, every false accusation, every drive-by glare had led to this. Justice wasn't theoretical anymore. It was visible, undeniable, and irreversible. Sheila's little kingdom of fear had collapsed in a single morning, and I, standing quietly on my porch, had ensured she would never wield that power again. The morning after Sheila's arrest, the cul-de-sac felt different, lighter, almost alive. Whispering Pines wasn't silent. It was full of life again. Neighbors emerged cautiously at first, peeking from windows, stepping onto porches, scanning the street. There was laughter, conversations, the subtle sounds of a community reclaiming itself after years under a tyrant's watchful eye. I stepped onto my porch, coffee in hand, inhaling the crisp autumn air. It smelled of damp leaves, pine, and finally freedom. Kids rode bikes in the street, tricycles wobbling, sneakers squeaking against pavement. Dogs barked joyfully, running in circles. Neighbors waved, some carrying tools, others just leaning on fences, smiling nervously. For the first time in years, it felt like a real neighborhood instead of a colony under siege. Sarah, the HOA clerk who had quietly aided me behind the scenes, approached with cautious relief in her eyes. "I never thought anyone would stand up to her," she admitted. Her voice trembled slightly, as if releasing a weight she had carried in secret. "We all thought she was untouchable." "She wasn't untouchable," I said finally, allowing myself a small smile. She just didn't expect someone to be ready. Someone who could see every move she made and respond in kind. By mid-morning, word had spread. Emails leaked footage and screenshots circulated the neighborhood. Whispers turned into stories, stories into laughter. Residents shared tales of petty fines, drive-bys, and absurd complaints, each tale now tinged with relief and vindication. The fear she had instilled over the years, the way she scrutinized yards, lawns, trash cans, even vehicles had evaporated. It wasn't just my victory, it was everyone's. The street that had shivered under Sheila's gaze now breathed freely alive with energy and, for the first time, real joy. The legal fallout was swift and thorough. Judges have little patience for people who call 911 to falsely accuse a federal officer while vandalizing private property. Sheila spent the weekend in county jail bail, set outrageously high her white SUV, nowhere in sight. When she finally emerged, she was smaller, quieter, defeated. The HOA board had convened an emergency session and dissolved entirely, replacing members and reorganizing the community governance. Lawsuits were filed against her for embezzlement, vandalism, and abuse of authority. The years of fines she had collected illegally, funneled into personal projects, were recovered, forcing her to repay tens of thousands. She pleaded guilty to misdemeanor vandalism and fraud to avoid federal charges. I had the ability to bring obstruction, interference with a federal officer, and abuse of power. Every luxurious upgrade she had installed in her home, the patio, the exotic landscaping, the pavers had been paid with funds siphoned from the community. All gone. The house she once flaunted was now a financial liability sold to pay restitution and legal fees. Even the HOA's internal rules were reformed. Arbitrary fines for beautification were abolished. Transparent reporting replaced hidden agendas. Residents no longer feared unwarranted penalties or drive-by surveillance. Freedom and accountability became the law of the land. Justice wasn't just delivered, it was visible, undeniable, and lasting. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt safe. Residents greeted each other without hesitation, and the oppressive shadow that Sheila had cast over Whispering Pines was gone, replaced by laughter, cooperation, and community. The last time I saw Sheila, she was packing boxes into a rental truck, boots dusty, head down, avoiding eye contact with everyone. No white SUV, no designer vest, just a woman stripped of authority, privilege, and fearsome reputation. The neighborhood had transformed. Block parties resumed, kids played in the streets, neighbors chatted freely. Even my back 5 acres, the site of my hunting and wildlife surveys, felt lighter, like the weight of her tyranny had been lifted. I repaired the fence she had destroyed myself, taking satisfaction in every shiny new post and taut wire. Every time I drew my bow and aimed at the forest line, I saw the symbol of patience, preparation, and justice served. I reflected on the larger picture. How many Sheilas exist, ruling cul-de-sacs and neighborhoods with petty tyranny, thinking they are untouchable? How many residents quietly pay fines or obey arbitrary rules out of fear? I wasn't worried. I had patience, preparation, and law on my side. Whispering Pines had learned a lesson: no bully, no self-appointed queen of a cul-de-sac could ever hold sway over the neighborhood again. Some mornings I still sit on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching mist roll off the forest, listening to the quiet hum of life, returning to normal. I think about the chaos, the tension, the planning, and the eventual justice. It wasn't easy, but it was complete. Every destroyed fence post, every illegitimate fine, every drive-by glare had led to this moment. Freedom tastes like coffee in the crisp morning air, and the knowledge that standing up legally and decisively can change everything. Whispering Pines now belonged to the residents, not a tyrant, and for the first time in years, I smiled, knowing that peace, justice, and a little poetic karma could coexist beautifully.